So either there is absolute activism when it comes to men, or it goes to the other extreme where there is nothing being done.
If I seem to be too vulnerable, does that take away my leadership, quote unquote, my leadership presence, the perception of me being able to lead a team and take decisions and so on?
We as men also need to take ownership that it is okay to be imperfect. It is okay to not be available all the time. And self-care is perfectly fine. We'll get there, but it will take some time.
I lost a friend a few years ago, a very successful man who was always the performer, the star, but couldn't handle the pressure and the expectation, and decided that he didn't want to continue with this life anymore. That incident left a mark and made me wonder the classical definition of being a man, being stoic, holding it together, handling yours and other people's stresses. I'm not sure if it is healthy. I don't think it is healthy. So to explore this topic further, I decided to invite Shiv Kumar. Shiv is a HR leader at Merck India and also brainchild behind Men's Circle, to another episode of Career Uninterrupted, where we talk about all things career. Thank you, Shiv, for taking time out to talk to us about this.
Absolute pleasure, Lochan, and thank you for inviting me. Happy to be here.
So I'm going to jump in straight and ask you the toughest question first, right? So you've been working with men in general and also supporting them in their mental health space and journey. What are some of the early warning signs that men tend to miss when their mental health is declining?
Lochan, when you were introducing the entire topic and you spoke about you losing your friends, so I think that is the whole problem with men's mental health. Because there are signs and, body does give you signs. Your mind does give you signs. But today, as men, we tend to ignore them. And that is the sad reality. Now, there could be multiple things as to why these things happen. Of course, as men, we are expected to be strong, so on and so forth. But body knows. So there are many things that the body tells you any which ways. For example, it could be when life happens, on small things, you are irritated, right? So I think that is a clear sign that there is something else that is happening within you that is shifting. And you need to pay attention. Things that you were not irritated with in the past are tending to irritate you right now. I think that there is a little bit of exploration that is required over there. Right. Or it could be things that you drew energy from today is draining you out. Right? It could be a hobby. It could be, watching television. You were always interested in these things, a trek. It could be a bike ride or just speaking with your children. But today it tends to drain you out. That is a classic example. Or the fact that you are just constantly drained. And the reason is something that you're not able to pin down. I think that those are classical signs. Of course, I can speak of fatigue. I can speak of, all those beautiful things. But then the point still remains. There are these simple things that we need to focus on a constant basis. It could be things that you enjoyed eating. Today, you no more enjoy eating those things. It could be a pani puri. It could be a bhel puri. But today, you don't want to. You don't want to meet people because they tend to irritate you. I think there are these classical signs that your body will show you. But as men, we tend to conveniently ignore those signs because we are told to be tough. Because in reality, all humans have these internal mechanisms of warning signs. Yes, we conveniently ignore them. And that's the problem.
Right. So this is something that we hear a lot, right? There is this unspoken rule that men should be stable, they should be strong, they should be sorted, especially at work. And even in personal spaces, if you've lost a loved one, it's okay for a woman to be seen crying at the drop of a hat, but it's seemingly not okay for a man to be doing so, right? I mean, there are these moments when you can cry, but you're supposed to always hold it together. And that also is expected at work. Like you're overwhelmed, you may be angry, you may be upset, like so many other like internal emotions. How does that expectation shape the way men deal with stress? Because it can't be easy, and the stress, you're taking everyone else's stress also with you. How do they deal with it?
One of the things that we lie to ourselves is this too shall pass. I love the phrase, this too shall pass. But then sometimes when it is used out of context, and that's where the problem comes in. So I think there are various things, from a stress perspective that men unconsciously or subconsciously, tend to ignore. So there are a few things that men tell themselves, and this is a lie. This is a lie. And that is one, of course, this too shall pass. We are men, we can manage it. We are expected to manage it, right?
Right.
And the other is that I cannot be vulnerable and tell folks that I work with that as a leader, I may not even have answers to it. So I think from multiple perspectives, that is where the challenge comes in. And people think that it is okay because you are a man, mard ko dard nahi hota.
Correct.
But the reality is mard ko bhi dard hota hai. So
Correct.
that is the actual reality.
Yeah.
But we tend to ignore those realities. And that's when I get a little concerned when people say that, hey, men should just take it all. And, at this point, there is one shairi that comes to my mind, if I may. And that is, I read it on Instagram. And that is, Umar bhar boj uthaya kir ne, tareef log tasveer ki karte hain. I think somewhere that struck such a strong chord with me. It resonated because men are those nails, which hangs that beautiful painting. Everybody looks at that painting and forgets that there's a nail that is bearing all the load. And sometimes that is what we ignore. The fact that the painting will be beautiful wherever it is kept, but it is that nail
that's holding it all together.
So I think this false narrative that we have built, in the context of Indian culture, it becomes even worse in my mind because we are told to act like men. I don't understand what act like man really means. But then, of course, we said, man up. Of course, why are you doing this like a woman? So on and so forth. As if, acting like a woman is a bad thing. There are so many strengths that women possess.
Right.
But I think we've taken it out of context. And that somewhere adds a lot of stress to what men experience. And that's the biggest issue. And to add to it, Bollywood doesn't help.
Yeah.
It has this false or pseudo masculinity that it brings in. Correct. Takes me back, when I was a child, and I don't remember the name, Qatar Ka Sikandar, or I don't know, which movie that was, in which we had that Papa Kehte Hain song.
Qayamat se Qayamat tak.
Se Qayamat tak, yes, Qayamat se Qayamat tak. So in that, Papa Kehte Hain, Bada Naam Karega, Beta Hamara Aisa Kaam Karega. Kaisa kaam karega? Right? So I think even our lyrics and songs have put so much of burden on men.
Yeah.
That bada naam karega. Like, okay, somebody asked that person, what does he want to do?
Right.
कोई इंजीनियर का काम करेगा, कोई बिजनेस में अपना नाम करेगा. Already there is this expectation that the person will become an engineer. So I think the point I'm making is that there's so much of stress, even though I as an individual may not want to, but it does come up. So that's more from a cultural context point of view. Now, if I were to extend that to workspaces, I think it becomes even more complicated. Because again, I always say that workplaces are a microcosm of the society that we live in. So what happens in society will be a reflection, in the workplace. So if we are going to tell ourselves that, hey, we will make our workplaces very different, we can try. I'm not going to say that, we cannot try. Of course we should try. But that expectation then transcends into workplaces.
Absolutely.
And that's when this whole thing about, hey, a man needs to behave in this certain manner comes in. And that's where I see the challenges.
Right. And, very, very nicely you shared that. And of course, it's one of the songs that, we all still hum to and sing to. And, in all parties and everything, you're singing to that song. But absolutely. So, there is a lot of expectation and also a lot of precedence that we see, right? You see the way fathers or brothers or most men, most people at workplace when probably we entered the workforce were men. Most senior leaders were men. Very few, very, very few handful women that we would see. So, as a man, how has that shaped, your relationship with work? Like, how much of it was inherited from what you saw or what you saw others do? And how much, effort did it require for you to consciously start saying, okay, this is who I am as a professional?
Yeah. I think I'd be lying if I say that, to me, it was any different. I'm a Fauji kid. My dad was in the defense, so it does not help much.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
He may not be a very happy man, but it does not help in all reality, because there's a certain expectation that you have of a male child and of a female child.
Right.
As a person who is a Fauji parent. In that particular context, I've seen my dad wake up at 4:30, do things in a specific manner, report to work at a specific time, and then we would get shouted at when we would not wake up on time or do things at a particular time. So I think that the expectation of that discipline is much higher when it comes to male children. And I'm not going to say that expectation does not exist when it comes to female children, but there is slightly more when it comes to male child. So I think back then, if you had asked me this question when I was starting my career, was it different? Yes, absolutely. It was very different, because I was taking what my dad had told me at that point in time as to what a male child needs to do. So, be perfect in everything you do, right? Do things on time. Naam roshan karna at workplace.
Right.
Work really hard. We've heard all this, and that speak like a man, dress properly like a man, wear crisp shirts. Oh my God. Now when I look at it, I'm like so much of stress that perhaps even I had to go through. And the very fact that in defense, the leader of the group is supposed to have answers.
Right.
And so that was a learning that I took back, that I'm supposed to have answer as a team lead, as a leader of an organization. And that was so much of stress, that armor, that mask, whatever you want to call it. It was stressful. But today, I think after 20 years in the industry, I've realized that, oh no, I really don't need to have answers to everything. There is a difference in the way I would have approached that I approach it right now vis-a-vis what I approached in the past. So today I'm comfortable saying I do not have the answers. Yeah, does it still hurt my soul in some way? Yes, it does. I don't have the answer. But I'm okay. With that. I don't have to, I don't have to be perfect. But I would be lying if I say that, that conditioning still does not exist. It does. It absolutely does.
What was probably the moment or the time where you realized that, this is conditioning, this is not really me, and I need to kind of get out of this? We all have grown up with this good boy, good girl syndrome, right? There are certain things that we carry forward from there, and which also translates at workplace. So were there any incident or any, moment where you just epiphanic moment where you said, okay, I think I need to, this is not me, this is not working?
Yeah, I'll tell you where. So this was in one of my previous organizations where I was managing multiple clients. And of course, when you work for organizations, you always have less number of resources. It'll never be adequate. So that time, since I was working with multiple clients, I had to wake up in an Australian shift. Then I was managing some clients internally, within India, and then Europe, and then, of course, some of the US folks. So practically, if you look at it, if you need to be available, you need to start early and sleep late with few hours of sleep in between. Now, at that point in time, I blacked out, and I'm being very vulnerable here. So I blacked out in the guest house that, we were asked to stay at a client location, because it just got to me. And then, unfortunately, I was alone in my room. I don't know for how long I was completely blacked out. And then when I gained consciousness, I did not have the energy. And while I dragged myself to bed, I just couldn't move. And that's the point I realized that I was working so hard, but at the end of the day, my body was just not able to take it. because I had to finish my to-do list every day.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then this whole thing about then you're stuck with this to-do list. And to your point, I have to be this good boy because I have to check off everything. But I then started questioning, who am I impressing? This whole need for external validation, this whole need to get these compliments that Shiv did a fantastic job. I think somewhere that was the point I decided I'm done. And now I need to, take care of other things that I'm interested in. Then I was asking myself, do I have hobbies? And I took a few days to answer that question. Honestly, I did not have hobbies at that point in time. And then I was like, oh my God, I need to do something. So I think that was a point where I decided life has more to it than just completing my to-do list and being a good boy.
Right. So a lot of men carry the default provider syndrome. And I've had these conversations with, a lot of couples, like friends. And they openly would say that, I don't mind my partner being the primary, breadwinner, let her career be, soaring high or whatever. And I'm okay to step back and potentially, let's say, take care of the family or the kids or whatever. But I don't have the confidence to do so. I don't have the courage to do so. A lot of them will end up saying statements like these because they feel they are going to get judged. That's what they would wish to be. How is this whole being a default provider, and how does this play out what do you see when you are interacting with, men as part of the men's circle and other spaces where where they come and share? Is it really a choice, or is it something everyone has internalized and said, this is what I have to do? And how are they navigating it or breaking out of it?
I think that's a wonderful question. I mean, of course, whether it is, a default setting or whether it's a choice continuously remains. But then this takes me to, I'm paraphrasing this, but then it takes me to, what one of the musicians had written, from lyrics. It says, and this was the context of men, it says something like, I can't hide myself. And this is from a men's perspective. I can't hide myself. I don't expect you to understand. I just hope I can explain what it is like to be a man. It is a lonely road. And they don't care about what you know. It's not about how you feel, but what you provide inside that home.
Yeah.
So when I was listening to these lyrics, and then then I was thinking that if it found its way into lyrics, which means there is a larger truth to that.
Yeah.
Music is a reflection of what's happening in society.
Right, absolutely. Especially lyrics, the way people kind of
Exactly.
use that as a form to express themselves.
Correct. Yeah. So I think even in men's circle, we see, similar stories play out. This whole guilt, like in women, when I speak with women, there is this whole mom guilt that we hear about. There is this provider guilt that we hear about when it comes to men. That I take a break, is that okay? Because that break is for me. During that period, I will not be able to provide for my family, so on and so forth. Right? So that guilt continues. Now, we hear stories like, when I was working, my family was very different to me. But then when I took a break, the families, the way they would interact with me changed drastically. My relatives started asking me questions like, hey, so what is the plan? When we hear it in these circles, what is the plan? How I wish life was planned.
Yeah, of course. How I really wish that.
I think that is what is the guilt is about. Is it about self? Is it a choice that I want to make so that I can take a break? But does the society allow me to take a break and enjoy the break and do what I want to do? I think those questions are kind of paradoxical as well in many ways, where we hear people say that, hey, now my friends don't speak with me as much as they used to because I no more earn and I am taking care of things at home.
Wow.
My wife looks at me differently. My parents look at me differently. And my siblings look at me differently because I initially had all those responsibilities. So today, am I useless because I'm not able to provide? So should I be finding a job?
Yeah.
So I think that guilt eats a lot of men up. And we hear a lot of those stories with drooping shoulders when people speak with us. So that's unfortunate.
And, this is someone recently, I remember as part of one of our programs for working moms, I remember this particular speaker shared that as an example. She said, the biggest tragedy, or rather the worst thing that happened to me was that I came back home and I told my family that I want to quit. And they all said, yes, please. And, so that was very and I said, okay, why is that a bad thing? She said, because nobody batted an eyelid and said, why are you quitting? Had the roles been reversed and my husband come back home and said, I'm done and I'm feeling guilty about not spending time with my child and I wanted to quit, all of us would have been up in arms and said, are you sure? And etc. And she said, and this is a place where I would like to believe that we are both reasonably progressive, we are think like an equal space. But my choice to quit was not opposed at all. And therefore, it was easier for you to take that decision and kind of, of course, there are different repercussions of it.
Yeah.
But a man's choice to quit is questioned unless you are physically, in your case, when that little episode where you're not able to get out of bed, unless you're physically in that space and pain where you cannot move or cannot do anything, nothing should stop you. You should just power through all of this, right? How can organizations support this, enable men to kind of maybe take breaks, or what should friends be doing? How should we create that ecosystem or that support system as well?
I think we've been pondering with this question in men's circle, how do we start doing this? But let's be honest. I think many organizations still look at sick leaves as sick leaves to start with, that I need to be sick to take a leave. I mean, barring the annual vacation, which is far and few anyways. So I think sometimes we need to take a step back as leaders of the organization and ask, should people really get to a point where they're sick so that we can give them sick leaves? That's counterintuitive to the whole idea of creating a culture of well-being in the organization. So I think somewhere we need to be okay with the idea of calling them well-being leave. I know it's just semantics, but then it makes a difference. That's step one. Once you say it is mental well-being, then I give the choice to the employee to take that leave or avail that leave even without being sick.
Yes.
Today, I don't feel like turning up to work because there's a lot going on in my head and I just need to pause. So I think we need to start that, because today sick means there is a taboo, there is a label of negativity associated with it. So I think organizations need to start there, that you don't need to be sick. Let's be proactive than be reactive. I think that's point one. The point two that comes to my mind, and I always question all ERGs, is employee resource groups, is that we speak about an ERG for gender. Right. But then we always associate with female with gender.
Yes.
We forget that gender is a gender neutral term. It's a word, right? So gender could be male, could be female, and all other than genders in between.
Right.
So why is that we are myopic in our approach to gender parity? So we need to remove gender equality and bring in gender parity as a concept in organizations. That is one thing. And the other thing that we also need to look at consciously is when we are speaking about gender parity, then if I were to assume, let's say 70% are men, then we need to have majority in the conversation and not just, come up with things with majority being absent. So that is going to be an important aspect. The third is listen to men. Listen to men. There's a lot of things that men also want to share, but we always create circles which are gender focused in organizations.
Right.
So I think those listening mechanisms need to be a little more holistic in nature. The other thing that we need to also consider are roles and emotions. I was watching a very interesting YouTube video, and in that, I think it was Shreya from Anita B. Org who was mentioning that emotions don't have gender. Right? And I thought that was very powerful. We know it, but then somebody articulates it and then you're like, aha. So I think emotions and feelings don't have gender. And hence we need to encourage men in any circumstance or context to explore emotions. Because today we speak about emotions and feelings is very girly.
Yeah.
And I think that's another thing that is important. And hence, we came up with the whole idea of men's circle and, come and express yourself, so on and so forth. But then I think those are things that we need to speak about. Most importantly, in schools, we need to allow boys to be without telling them what and how they need to be. So when do we allow is a question. And that's where we need to start, in how homes we need to start. It's okay to cry. It's okay to, express your emotions. Like I have a nephew who we constantly inform that if you wish to cry, cry. It's okay. And if you want to play with a doll, play with a doll. That's perfectly, fine. If you want to wear loud colors, wear loud colors. You want to wear a bow, wear a bow. So we allow him to be. So I think somewhere we need to allow boys to be. And that's where it needs to start.
Thank you for bringing that up, because as you were speaking about emotions have no gender. And one of my very close friends, she has a 7-year-old boy. And I remember she was telling me, she said, what is his holiday homework or homework for some 2 weeks or something? She said there is something called a feelings jar. So the entire family is supposed to say, what did I feel today? And fill that out and put it in the jar. And the more feelings that are there in the jar, the child gets like a star around it. So more feelings as in variety of feelings, right? So it's not just happy, sad. So she said, now I have to, obviously as a mother, she was just generally in a jest. She said, now I have to think of words and say, oh, I was overwhelmed. Oh, I was this. But, the fact that the child starts recognizing that my dad does feel sad. My dad feels angry. My dad feels hurt. My dad feels, overwhelmed. My dad feels tired, irritated, right? Like not necessarily only the happy, strong emotion, but also all of these. And it's not just coming only from my mother. It's coming from my father as well. And as a family, we are accepting of it. I've realized that the more they do this, the more the child gets vocabulary to express what both he or she are feeling, especially, in a lot of cases, as they start growing older, we start saying, don't cry, boys don't cry, don't behave like a girl. So we start like don't be so emotional. We start tagging them in certain way. And therefore, sometimes the only outlet that they have is anger. Everything just boils down to anger. Everything just starts lashing out in different ways.
I just want to add to that, Lochan, and that is when I coach or, I'm in a therapy session, it's beautiful to see how the interactions with women are vis-a-vis, how it is with men. Most of the times when it comes to women, I'm not generalizing, but in most cases, what I see is they are able to express, they have the vocabulary that you were referring to. But for men, I need to give them an emotions wheel and then ask them, hey, keep it with you. You don't have to use it. But then if you feel like referring to it, refer to it. The point is not that men don't experience it. Because they haven't articulated it, they don't have the vocabulary because the muscle is not built. And hence we have a big issue. And most of the time it's anger that comes out. And then we say, that angry young man.
Yeah. Yes, it's so true. So you mentioned Men's Circle, and I'm going to ask you to tell us more. So what is Men's Circle? What goes on inside it? I know, like, obviously confidentiality being kept in mind. And who can access it? Just getting some of that information.
Yeah. So just to give you a background how it came to being. So there were many times we were seeing that there are a lot of suicides. And I think more than about 50 to 60% of suicides in the country are committed by men.
Yes.
Self-harm, men.
Yes.
So there's a lot that's going on. It's just that the statistic may not make it into the eyes of a lot. That's when Srini and I were discussing, and then we were like, hey, what do we really do about this? Because there are no platforms. How do men then speak about these things? Because again, it is a taboo to speak about emotions. Then we did a little bit of research. There was a genuine issue, and there is a genuine issue, and you could research it, that there are extremes in the country, not just in the country, but across the world. Some of them are doing good job. So either there is absolute activism when it comes to men, or it goes to the other extreme where there is nothing being done. But we needed something in between which could do both in many ways. So then we created a platform called Men's Circle. This particular circle is about men coming together to just be. Because most of the time, there's an armor, there's a mask that they wear. So we need a space where that armor could just be put down for some time. And we hear stories, we hear experiences, we hear emotions flow in those circles. And it's beautiful because that particular space is a therapeutic space. It is a sacred space that's created by men who voluntarily come into the circle to share what they are experiencing and the parts of them that they have not, I would say, explored. So what we are trying to do is create these circles across cities so that these groups could come together and then become a I would say, sustaining mechanism of sorts, and people create strong networks because now they are allowed to be vulnerable. Because we as men never allow ourselves to be vulnerable. So this is a space where you are allowed to be vulnerable. You are allowed to cry. You are allowed to bring up topics which you otherwise thought was not politically correct to bring up. So this is a non-judgment space where every man can come in and just be without knowing that nobody is judging them. So that's the kind of oasis that we're trying to create for men.
So like you spoke about like activism, and of course there is this whole, Andrew Tate conversation that's also happening on pushing men more towards toxic masculinity. So we've taken, I would say, 30 years of conversation to start getting men to a point where, we say it's okay to cry, it's okay to, feel the pain and so on. And yet there is this whole piece that's happening to say, no, it's not okay. It's men need to be a certain way. They have to be, and this whole conflict that we are seeing around that, right? How are you seeing that play out, and what should therefore we be conscious of, both when we are, of course, when we think dealing with younger folks, children, but also in our environment, what kind of conversation should we be having or promoting, or how do you handle such emotions or such strong discussion points that keep coming up?
Yes, we are concerned about that as Men's Circle because some of them even asked as if it is a Me Too movement for men. And we were very clear, no. It's not a Me Too movement for men. May have a different space. We respect every space. But this is more about creating a space which is judgment-free and safe. How we look at it is, these are all, when we speak about toxic masculinity, there are two elements to it in my mind. I may be wrong, but this is in my mind. And that is either I'm overcompensating for something that I'm trying to hide. That manifests in toxic masculinity of sorts, or it could be any behavior that may be toxic in nature. Or, it could be, let's say, generational trauma, what has been handed down from generation to generation. And there is a certain, I would say, definition or vocabulary that is passed on.
Right.
So it could be either. But of course, if I were to just go one step up and then look at it, what is the impact of social media on these elements as well? So I think there are multiple variables that are playing into this, and we are concerned about it. And whenever we see these things, we call it out in our circles and in general as well, that it is not okay. Every gender is to be respected. Every gender has a space in society. Every gender is there for a reason, and we need to respect that. So by no means are we saying that, activism is necessary, not necessary. It has its own space. It is necessary in certain spaces, but not in every space. So that is what we continue to educate everybody. Is it easy? No. I was very concerned watching the series called Adolescence, right? So I was so concerned about it because I have, folks in the family who are about that age. And I was like so worried. I was speaking with my family members about it. But to be honest, in all transparency, some of them were like, no, this does not happen in our family. And I'm like, okay, very interesting, that you say so, despite the fact that the series is showing you so. So I think even acceptance that it could happen in your family, is missing.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of a concern in terms of acceptance for sure, 100%.
Have you had conversations where someone would have come and said, "Oh, is men's circle a space to bash up,
Oh yes, oh yes.
to vent and talk ill about this?" Or has it also been confused with the whole Andrew Tate equivalent movement? I'm just,
Yeah.
So how has that been? Anything there?
Yeah, so I think we've been very clear. When these questions come up, we are very clear about the fact that, it is not us versus them. I think, that conversation needs to be out the window first. It's not. We are here to coexist. It is about coexistence in a healthy fashion in society.
Right.
And everybody needs to find their space. And it is not going to be, us versus them. Our registration forms, it's on all emails that we send out. We are very clear during the circles as well that, hey, it's not us versus them. Everybody has a space in society. In the circle, you're not allowed to, use this kind of language, which is unaccepted. We certainly stop. Now, of course, what they do outside is, of course, left to them. But at the end of the day, what we're trying to do through Men's Circle is to, one, assure everybody that everybody can coexist in society in a respectful manner.
Correct.
The second thing is that at least half of Earth is full of men. Now, if we can make a difference in that 50%, then the society will be better for tomorrow.
Correct.
We like it or not, most of the decision makers today are men. And if we are not addressing that fact about their holistic well-being, there is a larger problem that we are sitting on right now. So I think that's where we focus on clarifying it's not us versus them.
You spoke about focus on their well-being, right? And my question then is to say that what does mental wellness look like in high-functioning men? And you would hear a lot of really successful men also kind of say, I don't have any mental health issue, because somehow it just feels very scary. But what does mental wellness look like for them? And how do you, have we started to use productivity have we started to assume that productivity equals health? So if someone is performing, then, they're healthy and that's about it. And we don't look at other parameters.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's how the society has defined it, that, everyone who's high performing is high on mental well-being. But it's quite the contrary in many ways. I wouldn't want to generalize in my mind, but then I think it's quite the contrary. What I see is every individual, irrespective whether it's men or women, when they are extremely I would say high performing. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Don't get me wrong here. What I'm trying to say is that have we taken a step back to see what are they actually overcompensating for? And I think in the absence of understanding what they are overcompensating for, then it becomes a challenge, right? Whether it's at work, whether it is at home, or wherever it could be. Because most of the times we see that these folks are overcompensating for something.
Something, correct.
Right? And I have been a victim of the same. So I can tell you that, that is the case. And it could be seeking external validation. It could be hiding a part of you that you don't want the society to see. Or it could be trying to prove someone wrong because somebody may have said something and then you want to prove someone wrong. Because I'm a man, I'm a woman, I'm from the LGBTQ community, so on and so forth. So there's a certain part that I do not want the world to see. So I'm going to go down that one. So there is a lot for us to understand as society, that there could be different coping mechanisms, there could be different ways in which it manifests, I would say. So that is one element. But in the long run, is it sustainable? The answer is no. It is not. High performance is not a reflection of complete well-being at all.
So, when we speak about mental health and mental well-being, how do we understand mental wellness for high-performing men? And a lot of times, I think we have assumed or confused productivity with health. So if you're productive, if you're, performing, then, you're probably healthy. And if you're not performing, you're not healthy. It's just kind of created that correlation. How do we understand this better?
So There are multiple things that come to my mind when you were asking that question. One is this whole startup culture of hustling and grinding, name it.
Yes.
Then at work as well, there's this whole expectation that you need to be the best of the best. I think societally we have started to reward folks who are seen as overachievers. But then whether you are an overachiever or you are working with somebody as an overachiever, one thing that we need to understand is the overcompensating mechanism. What is being overcompensated for in the guise of overachievement?
Right.
I think that is something that we need to understand, both as self and, of course, if I'm a good friend of that individual. So I think that is one important element that we need to focus on. And we also need to often ask that, are we running a sprint or are we running a marathon? So how are we viewing life? If it's about a marathon, then we know what to do. If it is a sprint, then we know what to do. So if you are looking at your life as a sprint, great, but then do know that the burnout is coming just around the corner. But life is a marathon, unfortunately, and we need to approach life accordingly. And I think those are things that we need to speak about in organizations. And I think that is what we shy away from, because we over-index on overachievement as opposed to consistency in performance, etc. By no means am I saying, don't be an overachiever. Please be an overachiever. Everybody has goals. But then be clear about your goals. I'll give you a classic example. In one of our circles, and not too long time back, there was a gentleman who came to the circle. Guess why? He came to the circle because he didn't have motivation. And we were very curious. So then he went on to, we never asked more details. If the person wants to share. The person said by 39, the person had already checked off everything on his list. And there was nothing to look forward to. He is demotivated. He has nothing going on in his life because everything is checked off. He's visited over 50 countries, which he wanted to. He wanted to make some money, that he's done. Everything is settled. Now, isn't that a definition of overachievement in many ways? And over here, we have children, I shouldn't use the word, but then, folks who are extremely young, who have, billion-dollar valuations of their startups. So they have run that race in their 20s and 30s. But then what next? Is it again going to be about another thing, so on and so forth? So the point is that somewhere we go wrong with goal setting in our lives as to what we need to do. But at the same time, we don't have to be slaves to these goals either, because life happens and we need to course correct as we go.
Correct.
But I think somewhere we need to strike a balance, and as organizations, we also need to allow people to pause. I think that's what I think.
So the definition of success, and because you said overachiever, has always been that, right? Somebody who has, I'm sure this gentleman is being called a success in his, in his environment, and people are praising him, saying, by the time he's 39, see, he has earned $1 million, he's got this fancy car, he's got this house, but all of those, right? Now, do you see that definition changing of success, with a certain milestone based, okay, X amount of money, Y amount of life in some way? Or is it still continuing to do so? And therefore, how is that impacting men's outlook towards work and career and everything around that?
I see it changing, fortunately. I see that there is a shift, but then that pace is rather slow, but it's good that it's happening. I'm very happy that it's happening. Recently, there was a video clip doing rounds of a Gen Z who recorded herself because she was asked to stay back at work for a little more time. She said no. Then she walked out. And then there's this whole thing that she speaks about, which makes 100% sense, that she has life outside of work. And she would like to, look at life differently rather than being chained to the desk. So I think the definition is changing. I have a lot of folks on my team who are Gen Zs who have a certain way of doing things. And I'm completely appreciative of the fact that, they do things in a certain way. They prioritize mental well-being, and it comes naturally to them. And I'm so jealous of them sometimes that I wish I had access. Somebody had told me that, there is something like this in the past. So I think there is a shift. The shift is slow, but I see a lot of hope when it comes to Gen Z is entering the workforce. But at the same time, I want to caution that the earlier generations, including myself, need to be open to the idea of reverse mentoring from these Gen Zs. Else, we speak about generational conflict, but then honestly, it's not generational conflict at all.
Yeah.
Right. So it is a conflict of certain mindsets. And there have always been conflicts with generations. I'm sure my parents, have made multiple statements that, oh my God, the coming generation is.
Yeah.
We make the same statements. So we become our parents in many ways.
I know. And I hate to say this because my team is also reasonably young. And I keep telling them, I'm like, oh my God, when I was your age. And then I almost can hear my mother in my voice saying when I was your age and so on. So, just if I were to put this all together, and that would kind of be my last question somewhere to say is it possible for men to lead with vulnerability because of so much that they're seeing around, or is it a risk? Because if I seem to be too vulnerable, does that take away my quote unquote my leadership presence, the perception of me being able to lead a team and take decisions and so on? How can men navigate that?
So the simple answer is yes, you can be a vulnerable leader. But then I think the answer is more complex than that. Because most of the times when we speak of a leader, let's accept it or not, the first image that we have in our mind is of a man. And that is the reality. I'm being politically incorrect and your viewers may bash me up for it, but that's the reality.
Yeah.
That the image that comes is of a man who is like suited and booted perhaps, and has this like stern look on his face. So I think that is what leadership definition in, I would say, conventional sense has been.
Right.
Somebody who's expected to have answers, somebody who's a provider, somebody who's a protector, etc., etc., etc. Now, all these words that I just mentioned, if I were to now overlay that with society, those are traditional definition of men as protectors, as providers, so on and so forth. Now, is it going to be easy for a man to say, hey, I don't know, I feel a certain way?
Yeah.
At work? Absolutely not. It is going to be super difficult for men to be vulnerable, and I think I appreciate that fact. But what we need to start doing as organizations is also let everyone know, irrespective of gender, that emotion, one, doesn't have gender. Second is the fact that there is a lot of strength in saying I don't know or I feel a certain way, rather than look at it as weakness. So I think that's going to be very, very important, and not shame folks when they come up and say these things, and rather celebrate it. And it all starts from the top. I think the leadership somewhere needs to be okay with the idea of saying no. I'll give you a classic example. That is, there are many times where I'm not able to be in all meetings because there are clashes, so on and so forth, etc., etc. And then, or I just don't want to be in those meetings because I want to prioritize something else. There's nothing wrong in it. But then the general perception is that, is it okay for the HR head not to be in that meeting? The answer is yes, it's okay.
Yeah.
Perfectly fine, depending on the context.
Correct.
We as men also need to take ownership of it. That it is okay to be imperfect. It is okay to not be available all the times. It is okay to, self-care is perfectly fine. It's perfectly normal to take care of yourself. Somewhere we don't do it. It would not be easy, but I see hope. I see Gen Z is pushing us to do that. Now, whether that's out of jealousy or learning, I'll leave that to the viewers. But I think I'm so glad it's happening, and we'll get there. But it'll take some time.
If one last, something that you would want to share with the men in our audience as to if there is one thing that they should focus on to take care of their mental health, what should that be?
I just, would like to say, take some time for yourself every day. Now, I have deliberately said take some time for yourself. By no means am I prescribing what that looks like. It could be anything that works for you. That's perfectly fine. And remove the whole thing from your mind that taking time for self is being selfish. That reframing is so required for men. And once we do that, trust me, everything will fall in place. And this is for everybody. Just take some time for yourself. It's not selfish. everybody around will understand. Nothing will fall apart.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shiv. This was amazing having this conversation. I do want to call this out in this episode. If you want to quickly share, if anybody wants to join a men's circle, how should they do that?
So we have a LinkedIn page called Men's Circle India.
Okay.
So folks could just follow that page. It has regular updates about our men's circle across the cities. Yeah, if they want to reach out to us, they could write to us, menscircle.india@gmail.com.
Okay, so that's menscircle.india@gmail.com. Fabulous. So in case anyone wants to reach out, please do so. This is a great space. I think I have to admit that one of the reasons why, I wanted Shiv here was the fact that Men's Circle is something that he has started, and that's a conversation that I've been having with a lot of people saying, where is the space for men to talk? Because we have enough space for women to also talk. Where's the space for men to talk? But thank you, Shiv, for doing this. And thank you so much for being here. It was an amazing conversation. And to all our viewers, please go ahead and subscribe, like this episode as well. Please do share with your friends. And this is Lochan Narayanan, your host at Career Uninterrupted, where we talk about everything to do with careers. Thank you once again.